In fact, I did just play a fling gig, and I made a rookie mistake that I have no excuse in making. I played the gig without in-ears. Now, of all the bands I'm in, fling is probably the worst one to do this with because I sing harmonies. I sing on every song. I'm either singing harmonies or I'm singing leads. And I realized that doing that with a monitor wedge, I had forgotten what that was like. And I don't like it. The reason I chose not to use ears, it was a multi-band bill. We got there. There was a 6 o'clock load-in sound check for a 7 o'clock downbeat, and fling was the first band up, which I always like on a multi-band bill. I like being the first band up because it means we actually get a real sound check. Whereas if you're playing in the middle or even at the end of the evening, oftentimes, no. Little pro tip there. But anyway, it worked out that we were the opening band of the night, which was great. So we got there at, 5:45 because I'd never played this particular club before and wanted to make sure I, understood what was going on. And we were using the headliner's drums, so I wanted to kind of negotiate that and figure out what of his drums I was using, if I was bringing my snare drum, stool, kick pedal, cymbals, like what permutation of all that. So get there 5:45 or whatever, and we were the first ones there. Headliner band wasn't there yet. Sound engineer wasn't there. Okay, great. But that's fine. Kind of expected. Band headliner showed up 5-10 minutes later. Like they were, perfectly on time and all of that stuff. And that sort of introduction and negotiation went very, very well. Okay, great. Let me help you with this, yada, yada. Well, now it's like, 6:20, 6:30, and maybe 6:35, the sound engineer shows up. It's like, okay, well, now we're playing the game against the clock. What's going on? And great engineer, very capable, nice guy. He did not know that he was doing sound until he got off of his day job at 5:58 p.m. So there was no way that he was going to be there at 6 o'clock for our load-in and sound check. So out of compassion, I opted not to do the, hey, can I get an XLR feed or a 1/4-inch feed, either one. Be ready for both, folks. If you are doing this, always be able to take whatever signal the house sends you for your ears. 1/4-inch XLR and XLR in both directions. I've gotten both male and female XLRs from the house. And so have all the adapters at the ready so that you can be the lowest friction guy, right? Or lowest friction person on the gig. So, but I never asked him that because things were moving very, very quickly. There was already a monitor wedge back behind the drums. It was actually, the way it was positioned was like the worst. It was to the left of the hi-hat. I don't mean like behind the hi-hat. I mean, it was like my line of sight. If I looked down at the monitor wedge, basically would have to look through the snare drum and the hi-hat to see the monitor wedge. So it was in a terrible spot. Like, it would have been better if it could have been moved behind me so that there was nothing in between it and my head, but that was not how things worked out. So and then we got to the point where we were line checking things, and it was at that point that I realized, oh man, I absolutely could have asked him for a feed. It wouldn't have been a big deal. It would have totally worked. It would have added very little friction to the whole scenario, and that was my rookie mistake. Obviously, made it through the gig. I'm still here. We're not saving lives out there, but and I listened back, and actually harmonies were in tune, and for the most part, and all that stuff. But it's like, why did I do this to myself? I did learn. And this was the part that I liked the least. Prior to using in-ears, I always wore earplugs at gigs, and I'd gotten used to singing and blending harmonies with earplugs. I no longer have that skill. I cannot do it, or I did not do it at that gig with earplugs. I played the gig without any hearing protection. It was a 50-minute set, 45-minute set, not quiet on stage. It wasn't terribly loud, but we were in the I was pushing 90, 95 dB back behind the drums, as you might imagine, especially with a monitor wedge there. So that's not a healthy thing. I need to somehow, I guess, figure out how to play with earplugs and a monitor wedge, just so that I have the confidence of doing that in a scenario if I find myself in that again. But so that's where we were. That's the gigs we've had. What gigs have you had? And right now I'm in the midst of playing this Spring Awakening theater show and a couple of Bitter Pill gigs. In fact, I'm recording this on Thursday, just before Memorial Day weekend, so on the 23rd, and we're in the midst of 7 performances of Spring Awakening, which will wrap up on Sunday with a 2 p.m. downbeat. And then I have an 8 p.m. downbeat on the other side of the same town in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, with Bitter Pill. So technically our load-in is at 5. I don't think I'm going to make that, but I'll be there close enough, and we'll make it happen. But what gigs are you playing? Feedback at giggabpodcast.com. What stories do you have? What lessons have you learned? I would love to hear from you about all of that. And it's nice to have some gig stories to share. That was part of my little litmus test of when I realized I hadn't, brought my drums anywhere. I was like, wait a minute, this is not good. So it's a problem in the process of being solved, perhaps already solved. So that was good.